Is falling down. So we appreciate your understanding what it's like to live in Northern Nevada right now. I'm in Las Vegas, so this is very foreign to me, but very
I guess you're like, snow, what is that? I'm teasing. You have Mount Charleston. At least you can go like look at it and that's not deal with it. It's pretty awesome.
Yes, we in Truckee are currently in a blizzard, in a red storm warning right now. So, had two trees get topped in the last 12 hours. It's been a really interesting day. So, I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah, so all this to say, we really
warmth and
appreciate your
internet.
patience.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you guys so much for being patient while we were a little bit behind today. We really appreciate being here. My name is Meredith Solin.
And I'm Lindsay Dimitri.
And we're going to be teaching you about some bird journaling today. And we're very excited to be here and very thankful as well. So many thanks to the Nevada Humanities Council.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us again.
Yeah, of course. So just as a reminder to everyone, we are your state's affiliate for the National Endowment for the Humanities, and we try to connect and transform communities by sharing and amplifying the stories, ideas, traditions, and experiences of the diverse people of Nevada. I see a lot of familiar people in the audience, so I know that you have come to either the previous workshop with Lindsay and Meredith, or maybe a previous one in our workshop series. But for those of you who are new to this, the workshop series is a part of our Nevada Reads programming for 2021. This year, we chose two memoirs that encourage us to celebrate and appreciate the natural world and to think more deeply about where we live and our connection and responsibility to the earth. So in particular, one of those books, it's a really beautiful book, World of Wonders by Aimee Nezhukumatathil. Come here. I'm glad Lindsay has her copy ready. The illustrations in here are so lovely, and
gorgeous.
The writing too. It's a really great reflection of the author's experience just growing up in the US and thinking about plants and animals that connect to her own life. So we hope that you're inspired to pick up a copy after our workshop ends. So very quickly before I introduce our workshop leaders, as we engage in conversations about the natural world and the land we inhabit during this year's Nevada Reads programming, one of our goals is to have our readers become better stewards of the earth and to learn more about the land that we live on. So today we are gathering in Nevada on the traditional land of the Northern Paiute, Southern Paiute, Western Shoshone, and Awasha people past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout generations. So to learn more about the land that you reside upon, we just shared a link in the chat to help you with this. So Lindsay and Meredith, thank you for introducing yourself at the top of the hour. I know people are eager to get started. So I'm going to turn it over to you now.
All right.
Thank you again so much. And many thanks to all of you for being here and joining us today. The way that we do our workshops is we love it when you are interactive with us whenever you want to participate. Often questions help fuel a bigger discussion. And we're not going to take up your time talking about ourselves. We don't do that. But we would be happy if anyone has questions to tell you more about our individual practices very quickly. Again, my name is Meredith Solin, and I am the folk school director for Artist Camp, and I'm a professional artist and illustrator.
And I'm Lindsay Dimitri again, and I'm currently teaching 7th and 8th grade science, but I've been doing research in the Great Basin Desert for 17 years as an ecologist studying plant-animal interaction. So,
awesome. And the way that this class got started is, all right, guys, changing camera real quick. The way that this class got started actually was during COVID. And what happened was while we were all divided, we got to connect over a shared love of birds. I all of a sudden found myself with a ton of time to be able to look out in my backyard and see the beautiful species of birds that I had never seen before. And I was constantly calling Lindsay, my resident bird nerd and scientist, and she would ask me a series of questions that had to do with how to identify these birds that I wanted to draw.
Yeah.
Usually they were.
Yeah, so I usually ask, so I taught field ornithology at UNR for 3 springs, and I always, like to refer to birds that everybody knows. So at first I ask, what size is it compared to a robin? Since most people know what a robin is, you see them in your front yard. So yeah, and then usually I ask, what is it doing? What position is it on the tree? Is it on the ground? Is it up against the trunk? Is it out on the limbs? So those are, and like kind of like, how is it standing? If it's sitting, is it perched kind of, horizontally or more vertically? So I kind of go through these little questions, and then usually we get to the bottom of it. At least we did most of the time. And she usually sends me some blurry photos, but those still help because you can see good idea.
So rather than just blurry photos, though, we also started working on the tools and following some other artists in the field of nature journaling, and kind of wanted to come up with our own formula of how to make this approachable for our students that we also teach.
Yeah.
As part of looking at some other people's work, we always like to salute it too.
Yeah.
John Muir Laws
Obviously,
is
this
one of
Bible
my favorite.
nature journaling.
And there's a lot of other wonderful nature journals that you can grab as far as guides, as well as identification guides. And it's always fun to have one of those in your backpack when you go out into the field or at home.
Yeah.
If your field is staring out your window.
I mean, the Peterson guide, this newer one is pretty great because it has eastern and western birds. This is a great Sierra Nevada specific guide. That's pretty new that I really like. And my very first guide that I still love Sibley because the drawings are awesome and the information is different in these two. And then my favorite that has more to do with natural history is this book, which is just gorgeous. The drawings in there are just so beautiful too. And it's almost like a story each. Or each page for each species. So,
and if anybody's interested in which books those were that we held up, we're also happy to put those up in the chat at the end of class as well.
Oh yeah, I also have a reference section on the packet I gave you that has the references for all of them too. So
awesome. So now is the perfect time. If you got the packet in the email and you want to bring that up on your screen, and you can follow along with what we're also going to show on our screen as the Zoom goes along.
Yeah.
And we'll start it off learning about our first bird. And I'm going to bring that up on your screen.
The Spotted Toehee. And I actually was just observing these guys over Thanksgivings. My mom lives in Genoa up against the Sierras. And they love kind of being under the bitterbrush or Persia tridentata.
Get off there. No, get off.
You can definitely identify them more by sound because generally they like to be on the ground so you don't see them. I usually hear them before seeing them. So I'm going to start off by playing one of their calls. Yeah, so that's a pretty obvious. It's a very short but very strong call you can hear when they're down in the bushes. You guys hear that? My favorite call is this mew call. It's like a cat call. Yeah, they call it a cat call or a mew call. So those are some keys that'll help you spot this, or at least hear this bird before you can even spot it. So maybe you'll get to see it in nature. But they really like shrubby areas. And I provided the description here for you guys in the PDF. But I just wanted to read one thing for you and then we'll get started drawing. You guys can read the rest. And I'll talk about them while we're drawing or while Mez is also showing you guys how to draw this bird. But I love this one quote that from one of the books that we used here. With staring ruby eyes and smart tri-colored outfit, it frequently flicks its long white cornered tail. So I love that they described it as a tri-colored outfit because now it does look like he's got a little suit on or something.
And I see Tracy in the chat, and it looks like there's one more person trying to join class. So I think we're working on that, and hopefully we will get that person in for you as soon as possible.
All right.
Okay, so without any further ado, we're going to bring up our overhead camera, and this is one of the birds that we taught in a previous class. This is the Western Tanager, and the finish on this was done using a special kind of watercolor pencil, using the Derwent Inktense. But the basic start of any bird, we are going to be using just a mechanical pencil, or I will be using that, as well as a black pen. This is a gel pen. It's called a Uniball Signo.
Get off now. Go lay down.
Pen
No.
is also
Take
the
it for a walk.
Pigma
Mama's with you. Go
Micron.
lay down.
And this one is an archival black ink that will not react to water. It's great to use if you are going to be finishing your drawings later on in your practice because it's not going to bleed. Where a gel pen can bleed, as well as just a ballpoint pen too. But for our first sketch of the day, we are just going to be doing a pencil. If anybody has a hard time seeing the pencil on your screen, just please let us know and we'll try and do what we can to make that image better, or I will just go ahead and switch off to a black pen instead. Some of the ways that we teach this class, I try and do a little bit of a quick alphabet. This was from our class back in November. And we're going to give you these little mnemonic devices to try and help you remember these tools for quickly identifying and drawing a bird. So again, we are going to start with this image. So if you could bring that image onto your screen or turn to it in your packet, we're going to start breaking it down.
Yeah, so I also included some other pictures of this bird just for you guys to enjoy because they're really cool. But at the last few bottom pictures of this bird, I have a female and a juvenile so the female's on the left. So this one that we're drawing is a male because it's got a fully black head. The female has more of a dark brownish black head. So that's how you can tell the difference between the two. And then the juvenile's striped and looks completely different. So our subject today is a male and he's perching very perfectly here.
Yeah. So if I was to call Lindsay, for example, and be like, I have this gorgeous bird in my yard right now, I would say it has a black hood, black wings with some white spots, and kind of a burnt orange side, as well as a white underbelly to it too. Lindsay would then ask me, well, where is he? It's like, he's crawling along on the grass right now. It looks like he's pecking in the ground. And these are all the ways that we start to figure out later what this bird might be if we can't identify it right away. So for drawing this bird, we want to start with the letter A. And the letter A for us is going to mean angle and axis. And what that refers to is the bird itself, the shape, the general shape of the bird. What angle is it perched at? And could I describe the center mass of the bird in terms of having an axis? So when I look at this bird, I see like a very round shape to it, slightly off. I'm trying to line up my hands in kind of the same position as your picture is right now. So the axis of the bird is going this way. Okay, so I'm going to draw on camera a darker line, but I would encourage you guys to draw as light of a line as possible because it makes it really easy to erase. And when you are sketching, the harder you press down, the more of an indent you leave in your paper. And that's what makes it difficult to erase sometimes. So that first line of axis is going to be about right here. So I actually drew it a little bit too sharp, I would say. So now is a good time to go ahead and look back and see.
You just tilt your paper.
Yeah, I can just tilt my paper. It's because I'm slightly tilted as I look at my paper.
Yeah.
That's a better line of axis for me. Now I'm going to take an estimate on what I think the shape of the bird looks like. A lot of times I would describe a bird as looking like an Easter egg kind of a shape. But this one kind of has an even broader egg shape to it. Like it's a very, very chunky egg.
A soup can?
Yeah, kind of. It's a soup can bird. Let's go with
Rounded
that.
edges, yeah.
If you haven't guessed yet, Lindsay and I have been friends for a long time and we like to crack each other up.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use some very light, quick strokes to block in the shape of my bird. So I'm blocking in the most general shapes. And the easiest one to start with is the central form of the body. The next shape that we see most often is the head of the bird. And what I want you to start to think about is what is the proportional relationship between the head and the body? And we're going to keep referring to proportion a lot. So if I was to take my fingers and I'm going to create a ruler using my fingers, I'm going to say, all right, I drew the body that big. Now I'm going to slide that up. How big is that head compared to the body? Is it half? Is it even less than half? I would say he's even less than half. It's about a quarter. So I might make a little tick mark for where I think that head is going to go. Now, again, I'm going to block in the shape of the head by breaking it down into a simple shape, like a nice circle. But notice the circle's not floating up here on top of the body as if it attached from point to point. The circle actually comes into the body. And this is where a lot of beginning drawers have a little bit of trouble because they tend to want to attach these basic shapes right at a point. When really, if you're looking from the head down to his body, you've got this graceful arcing swoop that would be his neck. We're going to get to that point in a second, but first, we're at our two shapes. The next shape that we see is going to be the tail. And you want to ask yourself, does the tail follow in line with that axis that we drew, or does it go off on its own? And it goes off on its own. And a lot of times, the angle of a bird's tail also is going to tell us about kind of what it was doing, how it was balancing, and where its attention was. So here's my next little axis line.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the angle difference between the two, and I'm thinking, yeah, I kind of nailed that.
Yeah.
Now, what's the basic shape there? It's kind of a super duper long rectangle, okay? Here is my rectangle, and we're going to go back in and we're going to smooth this out. There we are. Okay, so I want to make sure though, did I draw this long enough? Again, here's our proportion. So if I have my little pinchers and I'm looking at the body, I'm going to turn it and look at the tail. And I would say that the tail is just slightly smaller. I think I got pretty close. I'm pretty happy with that. The next shape that I see is going to be a leg that's coming down into the blades of grass. With this particular subject, we don't see the feet, and you know what? That's okay, because feet can be super tricky. But what I want to look at is, where in the position of this bird would I put the feet? Well, imagine another shape with me now if you can. It starts here on the tail. It goes down to where the leg attaches, and then it goes back up. There's a triangle for us. So we went with a nice soup can egg, a circle, a long rectangle, and now we found a triangle that's going to connect us down. And if you kind of use the leg of this triangle as a guide, the leg of the bird is very close to that angle. And there's another leg right behind it that's actually almost on that very same angle. So follow that from the tip all the way down. And then you can also kind of just rough in a little bit of grass for yourself. Just a quick little rough. So now I've got my basic bird shape on there. There is one more line that I also want to add in, and that is what's called the eye beak line. So we're going to find the eye inside the circle of the head. What I want you to think about is that the circle of the head is kind of like a pizza pie. It's a pizza pie that I only cut into 4 slices though. So I have top right, top left, bottom left. Where would you say the eye is in relation to those slices of pizza? I would say it's in the bottom right, maybe kind of poking just a little bit in. But before I fully commit to this shape, I got to figure out how big is the eye. Again, here's proportion. So using my slices of pizza, did this eye take up the entire slice of pizza? Did it go halfway over? I'd say it went about a third. So now I can kind of draw in my eye. And sometimes it looks a little creepy to have just a little dot there on the eye. Don't worry about it. We'll get to him later. But we've got a decent proportion there with our eye. The next thing that we want to look at is the point of the beak. And the relationship between the eye and the point of the beak is that eye beak line. So I would say, is he looking straight ahead, up, or down? He's looking a little bit down. And so we want to give that angle in the same regard to where he's looking. Then we're going to say, okay, how big is his beak? Do you have a super long beak? Did he have a short, fat beak? This is where Lindsay comes in, and she's going to tell you about what it might mean that a bird eats based on its beak.
Yeah, so it can not only help you identify the bird, but it can really help you understand kind of a little bit of the natural history about the bird. You know, if you've ever seen a woodpecker, they generally have a much longer, thinner bill. Finch, which these guys are, a sparrow, which these guys are essentially a big sparrow. They're seed eaters, so they have kind of a heavier bill. Finches also have very heavy bills. But then if you're a bird like a flycatcher, then they're eating more insects. They have kind of a flat, wide bill. So from the side, it looks really thin. So just by, taking a little time and checking out the bill, you can get an idea of not only what species it is, or at least what family it's in, but you can also understand a little bit about what it's eating. Seed-eating birds definitely usually have the most heavy bill, since they have to crack those seeds open.
Absolutely. So now that we know a little bit more about the bill, let's give that bill some shape. So it's not what I would call a skinny little triangle. He's got kind of a fat little bill. But again, coming back to the idea of where does the bill attach on my pizza pie? It attaches, I would say, just below. So I'm going to set myself a little connect the dot point. It comes to quite low. You know, you might think about that as about 5 o'clock. And it has a little bit more shape to it. Again, one of the things that beginning artists might miss is that when they go to connect this shape, they might just make it end right here at the circle. If you look though, as you block this in, you could see that it actually swoops back into the head itself before making its exit out. Now we want to say, all right, pinchers of power, how far is that beak? Well, I've got a relation point for you. The distance from the eye to the beak is almost the same in this particular bird as from the start of the beak to the tip of the beak. So here to here, here to here. And let's see how we did. Connect the dots. Using, again, just light, quick little lines. And then I'll darken my line in so you guys can see that a little bit better. The beak line itself, is it in the middle? Is it high up, or is it down low? And if you can pick up a pattern, we're constantly asking ourselves questions as we are observers of nature and as we are observers as artists. And those questions lead us into the relationships of the subject that we're drawing in terms of proportion and perspective. So now we're going to come to the letter C. We're going to contour and clean. I like to say to start at a point of the bird, and then we're going to go around the clock. So I'm going to start right up here at the top of the head. And I'm going to ask myself, is this a true circle, or does it have a little bit of a lean to it? So I would say it's got a little bit of a lean to it, where the top here comes a little bit higher before swooping down and becoming the back of the neck. The back of the neck is connecting into the back. And that's where I notice it's not quite as fat of a circle. So I'm going to calm that down a little bit as I head on to the tail. Looking towards the tail, I don't want to stay too thin. It actually bridges out just like that. Now I'm at my tail. Is it a straight line or is it a curved line? Definitely a curved line. So I'm going to do a nice broad curve here.
And the way a bird holds its tail can also tell you some information about species identification. So for instance, how he's holding his tail up, that's one thing I would immediately associate with this bird. But wrens also hold their tails up. You have cactus wrens down in Las Vegas. We can see canyon wrens in the foothills, and Buicks and house wrens will even like hang out around urban areas, especially house wrens, and they tend to hold their tail up like that and flick it around. So noting how the bird is holding its tail is can also be an identifying feature.
Absolutely. We've also done, again, the Western Tanager before, and check out the difference in how the tail is balancing in these 3 different shots in this composition.
Yeah, he's got his tail down in all of those, and she does. But the Toehee almost always has it perked up like that. Even if they fly up and perch and sing on the top of a branch, they generally will have their tail up like that.
Absolutely. All righty. So now we're going to continue going around the clock and looking at our bird again. Kind of notice in the back the way that the feathers, they're not crisp together. They're a little bit bridged. Excuse me. And that also has to do with the angle of how we're looking at the bird. So fluff it out a little, then bring it back in.
Yeah, this one. Do you want to gloss on it?
How's everybody doing out there? Awesome. Thank you, Katrina. I just always like to make sure that we're not going too fast. All right, so moving along, we're gonna come down here to where our triangle is. Again, thinking about the contour and the clean of this line. And I'm pretty happy with that. I'm saying, yeah, that's pretty true, but I might make it a little bit more curved as I approach the other side of the belly.
Yeah, and getting those undertail coverts, the feathers that press up against the bottom of the tail are called undertail coverts. And in some birds, those can have different color than the belly, so that's another area to look for any identifying features. Yeah, so I provided in your packet, not I think the exact same as this one that she's showing,
One?
but
There you go.
yeah, there
There's
you go.
one in your packet.
And you're not going to get quiz on this, but it's just nice to start to learn some of these terms, especially on the wings, because wing bars and white on the top of the wings, on the scapular area, that can really key you into some identification. So some of these features are just good things to take a look at when you are drawing your bird. And so if you look at our bird, he has on his wings the spots, which are, let's see, part of the identifying features and obviously part of their name, the Spotted Toehee. So that's going to be something, if you want to make this bird look really realistic, that you want to add in these features. Even if you're just trying to do a really quick sketch and this bird flies off, you would want to note that it's got some spotting on the wings, the rufous on the sides, and the black hood. So some things to key in on for this bird in particular. And this is something you can see pretty much I provided the range map, so you can see that across most of the, let's see, the state, you can see this bird, yeah, year round. I was wondering, I couldn't remember. The purple means that they're there year round. So, and they are generally, like I said, found in shrubby areas. The only thing that you might mix it up with would be a dark-eyed junco, because they have kind of similar, they'll be on the ground, they have black with some rufous, but these guys are quite a bit larger, and they also don't flock. So juncos are generally in flocks.
Yeah, the juncos, they're kind of the ninja birds to me when I see them land in my yard.
Yeah, you have a lot of juncos.
They look like they have a black hood on, they're just up to no good, but really they're just looking for food.
Yep.
So we're gonna come back now that we've talked about these feathers, and as you do your sketch lines, you can see how those are gonna be, you know, again, think about how you're making your lines. Like, are you making these harsh lines, or are you making a couple like quick little light lines? And as we look at his belly, it doesn't immediately go up in the same arc. It kind of comes out a little, and then it starts to come up. So again, we're just kind of cleaning up that shape. Now you can also see that his breast, which was in the black, you might not have seen it before, it's pronounced out a little bit before turning north and heading for the beak. And as it comes to the beak, now you can really see just how far back that beak is inside of that line. So while we might have started with a general little circle shape, we've really branched out, if you will, bird humor, and taken shape. Now I'll also come to my beak. I'm gonna double check, do I like the shape? Actually, I'm pretty digging the shape right now, but I might add that little nostril point in. And here I might also start to note, you know, the color of the eyes, the shape of the eye. It's not quite a perfect circle. All right. So now I could come back to the leg and just kind of pencil in how thick that leg is. I always say to err on the skinnier side for the legs.
Your camera just got off.
I don't know. There we go. Err on the skinnier side for the leg. And pencil those on in. Good. Now the next thing that we are also going to pencil in as we're looking at this image is going to be the cowl of the neck, that imaginary cowl that this bird is wearing. And where does it land? How do those feathers attach on the wing and also on the tail? And how are we going to block in for the rest of the color here? And excuse me one second, guys, because the camera shut itself off. So it might, let's see.
Yeah, so you guys can keep filling in details and Mrs. Get back on over here.
Yeah.
I can actually
Camera.
show you mine.
This is unfortunately what happens when you live in the mountains and you haven't had power in 2.5 days. Your equipment can get a little bit funny. But I can kind of narrate you through this at this point. So what we are going to be doing is looking at how we block in these shapes. As camera gets started. Come on, buddy.
You can do it.
You can do it.
Which one?
And we can always go old school with this too. Hi again. All right.
Oh yeah, you show yours first because it's dark.
So here's where we are with mine. And I'm going to do this backwards while standing up. Why not? Okay, so I've got this little cowl line. And I want to look at how far down would I attach it to. You might notice this connect the dot method that we've been using. We're going to go up. Well, check out the line that drops down from the eye to here. Okay, there's one shape. And now that shape comes down again. It doesn't just swoop back. We've got to make some room for some of those feathers. And now it's going to come across and my gosh, it's almost going directly horizontal. So I got to look at where it's coming and where is the terminal point? Where's the end point? Because that's going to let me know, have I drawn enough room? Okay. And now we're going to connect up. All right, so from here, now I'm going to shape in that wing. And we've got a lot of other feathers that are also speaking to us back here. We've also got a little tip, a little point of some color. So you can see where a lot of my lines are pretty dark for the camera. Hopefully your lines are still coming in nice and light. And at this point is when I might also start to pencil in where I see some of the spots and banding that Lindsay was talking about too. And for those spots, I'm going to need to also draw in the shape of the wing here and here. And that's going to let me say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points of white that all have a feather attached to them. If you drew 4, no problem. If you drew 7, no problem. Go ahead and sketch in any of these cool little details that you yourself might notice. Because we are now on the letter D, detail and define.
I've already been getting my details in over here. Since I don't have to try it as hard as you do.
Yes, it always takes a little bit more time when you're on camera because I'm both drawing and trying to explain every tiny step that I do. But by talking to yourself out loud sometimes as you do these things, it really makes you think about the process that much more. Also, as you are sketching in these tiny details, what you might want to also do is make some notes to the side. What are the colors that you are seeing in the bird? Are you seeing an absolute black? Or are you seeing maybe a little sheen to the feathers? Are you seeing...
Yeah, and a lot of blackbirds, you'll see that oil slick kind of color, whereas he's a pretty much solid matte black, right, on this bird.
Yep. So in mine, I've actually written the word oil slick before, but here I might call this like a charcoal sheen, where I want to remember that if I'm going to add color later on, it's not the blackest black. It's also a gray black. And then an even lighter gray black, where I'm going to add highlights to it too. And then, of course, there is the pure white itself. Now on his belly, my note might be that it's not pure white at all. That actually looks a little cream to me. Maybe a little eggshell.
But it could be just the lighting since he's on the ground too.
It
right?
also could be the lighting because he's just on the ground.
Yeah.
Now then there is, of course, is the brilliant color that is on the side. And that color, that's like a rust to me. It's like a burnt tomato. Makes me think of, oh, I know exactly what it makes me think of. Grilled cheese and tomato soup.
Yeah,
So-
in the bird world, we would call it rufous. It's pretty solid rufous. It's kind of like a, rusty red, but yeah, I think that would, but
Yeah.
Meredith is going to put tomato soup on
I'm
her
going to
notes.
put tomato soup on my notes. So I'll let you guys decide who is right. Is it Rufus or is it tomato soup? And as you're sketching in right now on your details, you can also be taking away any extra things. So you can start to take away if you did the pizza pie lines. You can take away if you did the circle for the head, or where we initially drew our funky little egg shape. And as you take these away, make sure that, you don't lose any of your notation lines, nothing that you wanted to keep in the end. But you can also start to add in like any hash marks, anything else like that. Where do you see the detail of the bird? Now, every one of you is an individual artist. You are a different person. So your drawing is going to look different to mine. And my drawing is going to look very different to Lindsay's. Lindsay has a much softer hand in her drawings, pretty much almost always. I tend to sketch on the heavy, quick, and fast side.
Probably because you're a teacher and you're used to that, though. I'm not.
Also, too, sometimes I just got to get done.
Yeah.
Very cool. So as we're going along, we'd also love to see how your work is coming along. And if anybody would like to share with us, I'm going to turn mine to gallery view and I'll be able to see it when you hold up. And hopefully we might be able to spotlight your work as well if you would like to share how your first drawing is looking. I think I see Helene has one for us today. Very cool. Oh my
Awesome.
gosh,
That
look
looks
at everybody
great.
sharing.
Yay.
This makes it super special for
I
us.
like that Helene has some notes on there, too.
Thank you,
yeah.
Rose. Thank you, Tracy.
Oh,
Thank
Christine's
you,
got the
Christine.
posture down. He's got the tail.
Very
looking
cool.
Awesome.
One of the things, we got Catherine,
Oh,
we
Catherine,
got
that looks
Heather. You guys, this is impressive.
Yeah, very impressive.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
How many people out there, was this your first time trying to draw a bird? You can reply in the chat. Oh,
Awesome.
Katrina.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah,
really
it's
nicely
very
done.
impressive. I always like when it's
Oh,
the first one.
Stephanie had colored pencils out
Ooh,
today.
nice.
She's already there. I'm
Yeah.
guessing colored pencils.
Or it looks like watercolor. She got watercolor.
Yeah, very nice. Oh, Rose, your first time. Oh, Catherine, I'm very, very jealous. I've never gotten to draw with John Muir Laws before.
That's
It is on
awesome.
my bucket list. Hopefully, I don't have to wait for the bucket. Hopefully,
Yeah,
it's going to come much,
We'll just
much
have
sooner.
to save up and take one of his classes at some point.
Yes, but he was a big, big inspiration for us.
Okay, well, I'll share mine too. if you wanna put that
Absolutely.
on.
So I'm going to
If you can even
turn our
see it
camera back
because it's-
on. Yeah. Here's
Let's
us
see.
again. Hello.
I got some notes. Yep, pretty light, but
You can see just how much lighter hers is as well than mine, which you're supposed to be doing because I told you to be light. So just in case you forgot, keep it light.
okay.
Alrighty. And mine obviously coming in a lot darker.
Yep.
Yep.
But I
Like
can
a
tell
lot.
that posture, and he's staring at the camera. Yours looks a lot feistier. He's looking straight at the camera.
I think it's because I spent my morning chopping down trees. I'm kind of in a feisty mood today, but
well,
you can
he's not an arboreal bird, so I think you're good.
Okay. Okay. Luckily, I didn't lose any habitat today. They were not happy trees to begin with. So call your local arborist. I'm holding both of these up side by side just so that you could see, again, the difference between two different artists and also the difference between pressing hard and pressing lightly. So
Okay.
for Lindsay, if she was to go to add, again, little black pen, she would be able to choose her lines of definition and choose your best line, as I like to say. So We won't do that right now, but you could choose to do it later.
Yeah.
And you could go back in. Again, I highly, highly advise grab your hands on a waterproof / archival ink pen. We are a big fan of the Micron. The 005 is one that I frequently use in my classes. And the reason that I like the 005 is because these tips will eventually mash down. And it's kind of like a super tiny, tiny felt tip. A 005 very quickly becomes an 01 or some of our other sizes. So if you start small, you're gonna end up with a bigger pen, a thicker line before you run out of ink.
Yeah.
That's the unfortunate side. So we're gonna start to talk right now about our next bird, and I'm gonna load him up on
The
your
Nevada
screen.
state bird, the mountain bluebird.
Gotta love the mountain bluebird.
And I included some descriptions that I really like, but I'll read this one. In the visual wealth of high Sierra landscapes, the stunning sky blue plumage of the male mountain bluebird stands out as a special gem, and no photograph or painting can prepare one for the full effect of this particular shade of blue. So I did my master's on Juniper seed dispersal. So I was lucky enough to see these guys daily. And so I have so many great memories of being stuck under a juniper tree, and I'd hear their kind of sighing call. I'd be frustrated, getting caught by all the branches, and then I'd come out and see one of these birds, and it really is, if you haven't seen one, they just light up. They are so incredibly beautiful. And I like that their call is very mellow, and it's like, I don't know, I can really pick it out because I've spent a lot of time with them, but I'm going to play it for you guys right now because sometimes with birds, that's the first thing you hear is the call. And, it's hard to just memorize them. I had to memorize them when I was in school and took ornithology, and then teaching the kids, I definitely got to know them a little bit better. But just if you spend a lot of time, you'll start to just hear the same patterns repeated. So I'm going to play one song right now. And the way it goes down. So to me, it just always sounds like they're sighing. It's a very sweet call, and they are just such sweet little birds, and it's so cool that they're our state bird. So yeah, this one, we have a few in your packet. I included the female is quite different. She's a little bit more gray, but they're still beautiful because she's got this slash of really bright blue in the wings. So you can't really mix her up with anything else. And these birds can't really be mixed up with anything else just because some of the other bluebirds we have, like the Western bluebird has red. And so these guys are very distinct and just gorgeous birds. And so I also provided, another diagram with the wings that Meredith just put up. And for this bird, it may not be as important, but for the last bird, as you saw with the pattern on the back of the wings, it's kind of important to know like difference between primaries and secondaries. And yeah, you can definitely, have a more realistic drawing if you were able to put some of these pieces in. So on this bird in particular, the only, differences we're going to see are between the, on the belly, it's got a little bit more of a washed out blue-gray on the female, and then the male has a really white lower belly, but otherwise, they're overall a lot of blue. And these guys have, if you look at the bill, a very diverse diet. They'll eat juniper berries, but and other wild, fruit, but they also eat a lot of insects. So these will be seen fly catching, almost like a flycatcher. They'll hover. So you might be confused if you see the behavior first, because they do hover, which generally that's, and they do sally, which is when they stand on a branch and they fly out and catch something like a flycatcher. So that might be confusing, but then once you see the color, you won't confuse them with anything else. So we are going to draw the first bird there. And then let's see that image. Yeah, because it's a pretty nice profile, and I just love, you can see some of the feathering detail on the face. So maybe we can add a little bit of that detail in. And I know when I like to go back after these classes, I go back in with my Micron, and I do like to watercolor them. So during the class, I'll kind of add some of the little feathering details so that, yeah, I can go back and actually fill them in. And Mez is just switching out our other camera. So I want to take a moment to read from the World of Wonders, a passage that as a bird nerd, I really loved. And this book was just such a gorgeous book that I wanted to read another passage. So last time I read about the cactus wren, this time I'm reading about the superb bird of paradise. So in that chapter, I love the way she describes it. She describes it like a real birder. So the superb bird of many colors, its beak is like the blackest black night in January when you're trying to write a letter on black construction paper with a black swan feather dipped in India ink. It's pretty black.
Pretty black. I like pretty black.
Like, okay, that really describes how black and deep blackness of that bird is. And then they say, when the superb hoists up its long black nape feathers, it looks like it's swooshing an elliptical cape around its neck. It's one of the showiest displays in the entire animal kingdom. Iridescent blue feathers on the superb's head flash extra blue as they catch the sun. Little eyes against the black oval of its nape. So I like to imagine that blue is probably somewhat similar. We don't have superb bird of paradise. It's on my bucket list to go to New Guinea just to see them, but we do have the blue of our state bird, the mountain bluebird. So,
and look at that, we're back. Yay! This is why you always pack extra batteries, just in case you're wondering. I also do photography and it always comes in handy. So thank you guys for your patience, but honestly, you just got to hear more of Lindsay, like straight in a row. We loved that passage that she just read from, especially too, because when we talk about nature journaling and how it is that you're going to remember these birds, the more of an attachment you have with your subject, the more imaginative you are with them, the more likely you are to remember them. So when you go back and you visit your journal later, you're able to add in all these other details that otherwise wouldn't have a story. And anytime we give something a story, it becomes part of ourselves. It becomes part of our heritage and our own personal folklore. So here was where I left off on my drawing. And thank you guys all for sharing yours. That's always impressive when we get people that are willing to share. We're now going to turn the page. It's up to you. You can draw if you left yourself a little bit of space, depending on the size of your journal, but I would not draw on the page directly next to it if you just did this in pencil. A little art tip, that is because you can get what's called carryover or smudging as you go from page to page. If I had just done this in pen, I'd be safe. I could use the very next page, but I'm going to leave myself a little extra room. And this time when we go to do our bird, we're also going to do like the full journaling practice where we really are going to take our notation on what we see that is special about this bird. So again, starting off with the letter A, angle and axis, we're going to try and go a little bit faster. So I'm going to look at this bird and I'm going to say not totally straight up and down, but really close, maybe a little like 15 degrees off. And there's my first line. Bring that to the center for you guys. There we go. All right. The next thing that I'm going to say is, all right, let's look at this center shape. Definitely thinner than our last bird. So when I go to make my egg, I'm going to be looking at the span that goes across this axis line and going to draw in a nice tall egg, a long egg. Maybe came from an extra long chicken. You never know. Lindsay has chickens also, by the way.
Yeah, one of them laid a weird small egg.
Really?
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with a little weird egg. I was a little weird egg once.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. The next shape that we're going to draw is going to be the head. And I'm going to say the head actually this time is staying very close to this axis line as well. And I'm going to call that another skinny circle, but it's to me noticeably bigger than the last head. So again, use your little pinchers of power, hold it up to your picture, your screen, your image, whatever it is that you've got. And I'm seeing less than half, but definitely more than like a quarter. So sliding up, coming back half, a little bit, like right about there. All right, so that's going to be about the top point for me. But I'm also seeing the width of this circle compared to the width of the body. And his head is coming in right about to here and is very close to being in line with the back. So that is going to be my circle for his head. All right. Now, you might notice the eye beak line here is really strong because his eye is very piercing against the blue of this image. So we can go ahead and even add that in. Find the little pizza pie here. Find the eye. I'm going top right for mine. And how far on that slice of pizza does it go? A little bit less than halfway for me. So I'm going to say the shape of the eye is right here. And the eye beak line, is it looking across the pizza pie or slightly up? Slightly up. Great. Now I've got my angle line. And how long is that bill? Now that bill, oh, thank you so much, Stephanie. Well, I'm sorry that we didn't get to finish for you in time, but hopefully you can maybe catch the recording that we're doing today. But thank you for being here. So on that beak line, how far does it go? Well, is it, like I was saying before, is it the distance from the eye to the head? Or is it maybe a little bit longer? I'd say it's pretty close. So here to here, here to here, maybe a tiny bit longer. Okay, how about the width of the beak? Again, much, much shorter. In fact, it's almost in line with the eye. If you look here, there are some more guide points for you. So I'm going to attach my triangle just like that. And again, remembering that this bill, this beak is going to come inside the head. Doesn't just stop short. Much like in traffic, don't stop short.
Yeah, he's got
Yeah.
thin beak for eating insects, but it's also kind of flycatcherish. If you looked at it from the top, it is slightly wide. So
Yeah. All right. Here's another cool line. Check out the line, the eye beak line, compared to the wing line. Because the wing line, if you look at the tip of the wing, it's not quite following here. It's kind of sweeping back. So we've got another axis line here. And we have another very strong shape because of the coloring of the bird. We have this elongated teardrop. And I would say that that teardrop starts below where I drew the head, goes flush with the back, and then swoops out. Now, how far does it swoop out? Again, pinchers of power. Let's see. I've got here, I've got here. I'm gonna say that's about half the distance. So it's about right here.
yeah, so as
So if
you
you're
can kind
looking
of
at
tell,
that-
it's got they have really long wings, which is something that Mez is keying into right now. And that's
Yeah.
what helps them to do that more hovering flight. Because our last bird, if you notice, he had kind of short, they have stumpier wings. He doesn't do a lot. The rufous or the spotted tohees don't do a whole lot of, long distance or hovering flying. So that was cool that you keyed into. Yeah, the wing is almost as long as the tail, as you can see in this
Yeah.
picture.
It's not just almost as long as the tail, but it is like
the body,
almost
yeah.
as long as the distance between the body and the head.
Kind of
Like that
reminiscent
whole
of a
thing.
swallow, right? If we were drawing a swallow, they have
Totally.
their wings come up that high.
So we've got this nice thin, ice cream cone, whatever you want to call it. And then we go down to our next grouping of feathers. And you can now kind of say like, all right, was that even in line? Or does the tail feather go farther? If so, how much farther? I'm going to say it goes to about there. And you'll see how it kind of connects and then connects up again. And now we're getting back up to where the belly is. And there we are. All right. So we did A, we did B, we just did our blocking in basic shapes. And now I'm going to add in my leg. This time you can see the leg. And what's striking to me, that's going to be like one of my first notes on here, is the blackness of the leg itself.
So in gulls, leg color really doesn't matter for a lot of passerine birds or perching birds. But for gulls and a lot of shorebirds, leg color does matter. They can be pink, they can be yellow, they can be black. They can have slippers like the snowy egret where it's black legs and then yellow feet. So yeah, for a lot of perching birds, it's not as important of a feature to key into. It's not as important as a field mark. Field marks are kind of the traits that you can use to identify. But it is something that's always good to look at too.
All right, and what you might see me doing right now is exactly what I was saying. I'm gonna start to do the journaling side of this, where I really am adding in some notes as I am going along. And see how the feathers are tipped in black? Try and come up with a story for that.
Yeah, that's like the primary and secondary flight feathers really have kind of like those darker tips.
Like in my head already, I have this image of a bird like flying over a black pool of ink, and you just kind of gracefully dipped all of his feathers. Yeah, this is what happens when you have artsy brain.
The origin story of
that is the origin story of the black on the tips of the feathers. Yes.
Okay. All right.
And now you know. And then maybe I'll say that this is like a charcoal colored beak. You can't see too much of the eye, but I would call that like a deep brown eye. So now let's say that your bird flew away. Well, I'd at least have a good memory of a couple things that I could clue in on, and then I could get out my guidebooks. I could get out my source material and say, I bet I could find this bird, and then maybe I can finish my sketch too. Or at least I'll know him the next time that I see him. All right, so let's get to stage C. Let's get to clean and contour. Again, start off at any given point, and you can either follow along with us or you can choose your own point. So I, this time, am going to start right here where the head meets the beak. We're going to go the other direction. And I notice how it kind of really swoops forward. So I'm going to flatten out that shape, come up to the beak. Super noticeable nostril in this one. And it comes along, and I also see a lot of darkening of the beak. So I might go ahead and just shade that in. Now as we come up, we again see the point where it almost looks like this is like wedging forward towards the beak, his head is. And I'm going to come to this line, and I'm going to say, you know what? I want his body to start a little bit sooner. So we're going to bring that oval shape up and then round it down. His breast is not nearly as pronounced as our last bird's. There's no offshoot here. So we're going to continue to come down. I'm going to give him what I like to say, a nicer lunch. I might have made him a little too skinny the first time. This time he went to an all-you-can-eat buffet. Alrighty. And then we come swooping in and over to the leg. And don't worry, because the leg is dark, you don't have to worry about crossing the stream. Just go right on over. And you can see that there is a little bit of an angle change here, where it's not following along with just a smooth curve. There are these feathers coming down. Okay. We've also got a very noticeable kind of haunches right there in his leg. So I might also pencil in that shape right now too. Before I keep going to the back, and we've got the finish of his body, which is kind of feathery, and it's starting to blend in with his tail. So now I'm checking, am I happy with how that tail attaches? And then thins out. And this one's really coming to this nice, pretty pointed shape. And I've also got this very distinguishing line where I see blue that's kind of dividing this portion in half. And I'm going to note that, because that little thing, it could be the difference between one species and another. Now I've also got this striking sweep and a black line here. So as I am contouring, I might just add that darker line because I know it's going to be darker. Now we're coming up along the wing itself. And there is a little change here where the wing, we have these upper coverts, is going to meet up with the next set of feathers.
Yeah, the secondaries and then the
secondaries
primaries.
And now the primaries. So you can see I've actually gone ahead and divided this into 3 sections. And those are also 3 areas where I could see a very noticeable change. There's a 4th area right here, and you see the direction and color of the feathers change. And I'll block that in right now too. All right, then we come up to the back of the bird. And he's pretty good posture. He's standing up very well.
Yeah, he does.
He has slight computer head. You know, he's leaning forward just a little bit. If you guys are guilty of that, I know I am.
Yeah.
All right. Now I've also got this line that I see. Part of this is shadow, part of it's coloring, where we have like a darker blue. So I might just take a few swipes at that. Coming back over to his eye now. And again, looking at, it's like a very windswept eye shape. It's not a perfect circle. And I also see as I look closer that there are some white feathers that are going around the eye as well, underneath. And those are a very special kind of feather.
Well, some birds have an eye ring, especially flycatchers, but even so, these guys are in the thrush family, and thrushes in general can have more of a light coloring around the eye. So that is something that you would maybe want to take some notes on so that you could go in. So robins are also in the thrush family, and as I've said, they have some white around the eye. And as I told you guys, I always compare things to robin size. These guys are slightly smaller than a robin, but they do have pretty similar posture and overall shape.
The other thing that you might be noticing me doing now too is I'm also adding in some direction for the feathers. And you'll see that as you're looking at a bird, the direction of the feathers in the head changes. It kind of goes around the clock. So when you're going to draw, I invite you to not just draw all of your lines in the same direction, but also to move with the feathers. Add the movement into the bird and contour these feathers. It's a good practice, and it'll help you really go back in and add a lot of heft to your subject, where it's not just flat. It really starts to come off the page.
Yeah, they definitely, and this photograph is great because you can really see a lot of these little tiny details.
All right, and because I'm happy with my wing, now I'll come in and darken that a little bit. And we are on D, we are on details. So if you haven't already, this was a stage where you could also take a couple lines away that you're not happy with, or if they're just kind of bugging you out. Clean it on up. Excellent. And then as we come around to the bottom, I can now pencil in the legs of my bird. I'm happy with that angle that I chose. And I'm going to add 1, 2, 3 toes and a back toe, that fourth toe going off in a different direction. He's also kind of perched on like a little nubby little branch. So I might sketch in the nubby little branch. And now my bird isn't just flying in space or perched in space. He's perched on a branch. And then you can just use your lines to draw in a little bit more. Here we go. Awesome. So hopefully with this next sketch, you found a couple more things to notice. Each time you do this practice, it's always a great idea. Try and see how quickly can you do this. And of course, we're going really slow because we're also trying to memorize A, B, C, D and think about what kind of things we want to take note of too. I can tell I was drawing at an angle. Drawing for camera is always fun. So I might come back in now for my details. Start adding the swoops of the wing, especially these heavily colored ones. Okay, start adding in, and you might see I'm not starting from the top every time. I'm also going from the bottom because that's where the darkest point is. So I'm really using that dark to light method. And then down here. And as you get towards the bottom, these are also the stronger feathers of flight. So my line choice changes. It's not all short, quick lines. It's also these very long, strong lines. If I was just keeping this sketch in black and white, I might choose now to go in and add a little bit of shading so that I could tell the difference between the different parts of the bird and where I would want to add in some more color later. And you can also use, one of our other favorite tools is a white gel pen. And that is a great way to go back in and add highlight where you might have lost highlight before. So for example, On the eye of my bird right here, you might have seen that I did a really quick darkening of the iris and then tried to leave a little hit for the highlight. I can use my white pen and really punch up that highlight, and even use this to punch up those little white feathers, that little white eyeliner that we had down at the bottom. And that really gives the eye a lot more character. Always add the little hit of light. Yeah. All right, so again, because I'm just staying in black and white, I'm gonna do a little bit of shading on here. I'm very lightly pressing with my pencil to add some color. And as I get towards different directions, I'm also going to change the lines that I am doing. So changing the movement of my line. I'm not gonna highlight everything. I'm not gonna shade everything because it's just a sketch. And we're gonna do hundreds of thousands more in our lives, right? Yes, totally.
Better get busy, 100,000.
I know, hundreds of thousands. I really started thinking about that after I said it. I was like, I am a slacker. I haven't even taken my own advice yet.
There's always time.
Make time for nature. Make time for journaling. We hope you guys are inspired by this practice and inspired by, everything in your own lives. And you can take this towards anything, not just birds, but towards other animals in the nature kingdom as well. That's also a wonderful part about the book too.
Yeah, definitely covers a wide array from squids and to birds. So that's one thing I liked about the book that the Nevada Humanities, which I'm grateful that they sent me that book because it's really stuck with me. So yeah, I think for the purpose of this sketch, we can move on to the next beautiful bird. How's everybody doing? I feel like a pretty good outline of mine. So
yeah. So she's got, again, this very light, beautiful, clean style to hers, where I was going for the make sure that you could see it heavily on camera. Does anybody have any questions about anything that we've gone over so far, whether it had to do with method, technique, punchlines to our jokes? Those we can't always explain. But if you do have any questions before we go to our third bird, we'd love to hear from you. And if anyone also wants to share, we're back on gallery view and we are here to watch you.
Does anybody want to share this one? How did it go? Tried to pick a easy. Ooh, that looks great.
Nice, Catherine.
Yeah.
Christine.
Nice, Christine. That looks great.
Oh, wow,
She's
look
really
at all
got
these
the
birds on
posture.
screen. This is great.
Yeah, Christine nailed the posture for sure. Awesome, Rose. Thank you for
Wow,
sharing.
guys,
Katrina, that looks
y'all
great.
are doing great.
Yeah.
Bravo,
Awesome.
bravo, bravo, bravo.
Okay, and our last bird with that, since we got 15 minutes, I know we can do this in 15 minutes, is the Lazalei Bunting. And this is a bird that we only really get in the summer. If you were down in the very southern tip of Nevada, you would only really get to see it on migration. But the first time I saw this bird, I was doing bird surveys at the mouth of the river into Walker Lake, which I'm not sure if anybody knows about that lake. It's near Hawthorne, but it's an incredible place. And this bird just was perched and singing right at sunrise, and I will never forget it because it was one of those where I was like, oh my God, I know I'm supposed to be looking for this bird, but I hadn't seen one in real life, and it really stunned me. So I'll play the song here for you. Yeah, so it's pretty high-pitched warbled phrases, and then it kind of ascends and descends. Do-do-do-do. So it goes down the scale a little bit at the end there, and that's one of the main songs. But yeah, these birds are just stunning, as you can see. And I'll just read one little, the quote that I put in here: the exquisite turquoise plumage of the male Lazalei bunting equals in splendor the semi-precious stones lapis lazuli. So that's hence the name, but they just really, splendor is the perfect way to describe this plumage because they are stunners. And the female I included in your packet, once again, she's a little bit more drab, but I mean, she has to sit on the nest. So that's, definitely an advantage evolutionarily to not be so flashy. And the juvenile is pretty similar to the female, just with streaking. So they are very gorgeous birds, and they're related to finches. So that's why, cardinals, sorry. Cardinals, you have they're in the same family as cardinals, which you have tanagers, And you also have buntings. So they have that more heavy bill. So that's something we definitely want to, make sure we capture in our drawing here.
Absolutely. One other thing to note, as we have gone through our images today that we've chosen for you, is the posture of the bird. We're looking in these first two images in a profile posture of the bird, meaning we're only really drawing half of the bird. It's a great way to start when you're first learning how to draw, especially if you're first learning how to draw an animal. We're going to spice it up for this third one though, and we're going to start to introduce a little bit of a 3/4 posture. So if you notice, you could see both of the legs here, and you could see a more broader view of the breast. You can't see both eyes in this, and that can sometimes be typical of a 3/4 view, is to be able to see both of the eyes. But this little guy has like a very quizzical look to him.
Yeah.
He's really
He's
noticed
posing.
us. He's posing. He's puffed up a little bit. He's liking your outfits that you all wore to class tonight. And he's very happy that you're here, and it looks like he might wink at you any minute.
He's very cute.
That's kind of what I'm waiting for right now. So again, give him a little story. Give him a name. Lindsay, what's the name of our bird today? What do you think?
I'd say Leonard the Lazalei Bunting.
Leonard the Lazalei Bunting. It's a little bit long. I might call him Lenny. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Lenny. You could call him Leonard.
Okay.
Again, we are looking at a male of a species, so it is dramatically brighter than the female, who's got a lot of good protecting to do at home. So we're gonna give a little bit of special credence to this, and I'd like you all to come up with a name right now for what is Lenny's color. What colors do you see here? You heard Lindsay mention a color before when we were first drawing, and that was Rufus. To me, the difference between our first bird and our second, like this would be a light Rufus color.
Yeah, it's a little more washed out. It's more rusty.
Yeah, really has a nice fade to it. So your process of journaling is really up to you. Do you first start drawing, or do you first start your notation? This is Lenny.
Yeah, he's got more orange-ish, more orange to the breast too. But I feel like you can also judge if this bird was sitting there perched, because these guys the males will during the breeding sit and perch. So if you were quiet enough, you could sit and get a good drawing in. But if they're sitting at a feeder, you might have a second or two, because they'll be jumping back and forth between the food. But breeding time is a good time to go birding, because the males will just sit and sing and perch. And if you're really sneaky, you could probably get pretty good drawing in before they flew off.
So you might notice that I am starting my practice this time by noting some of the main things that I see in my subject. I see a stunning turquoise head. I see that fading rufous breast. And I see on the wingtips that we've got black, white, and also turquoise. And so I can always go back and add this. And then we have white on the underbelly. So that's the beginning of my practice for me today. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to start to attack putting Lenny to paper. Again, letter A. Let's get our angles in. Let's get our axis in. Nice. So for our guy right now, he's kind of coming in. Think about this. There's 0. There's 90. He's a good 45 to me. He might be a little bit higher than 45, but here we go. Okay. I could also go ahead and draw in the next one for the head, again, because he's really noticed us. He's a cheeky little bird. He looks like he's going to wink at me. He's kind of necked up, so I know that when I go to add in the head, he's going to be on a very up and down plane. I'm not going to worry about the tail just yet, but let's go ahead, add in those basic shapes. This guy, if you look at this basic shape, because he's at this 3/4 angle, his body is really going to taper off in the back, and his chest is going to present as being much thicker, much wider. Okay, so I might even draw like a little collar in for him right now, and you can see just how really present that collar is. It really pops out at you.
Yeah, they are just so pretty.
Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and put the rest of his head on, which is really helpful for a bird to have a head.
Yeah.
Okay, looking at that proportion, now we've got a subject where his head, I would say, is about half the distance of his body. Maybe it's a little bit shorter, but we can come back and correct that in our clean stage. And it's also presenting a little bit forward, but really just kind of focus in on the bulk of this shape.
Bill.
Lives up here
Real chunker.
and attaches back here. He's got like a very extended, elongated head. Okay. Now I might go down. I'll look at this wing, and here's my teardrop shape again. It's starting very close to where that neck is going to be, carrying down the swoop of his back. It's not coming very far into his belly though. Okay, he's very like proud and forward with his chest. So we want to make sure that we don't cut that off.
Well, if I was that pretty, I'd be pretty.
I'd be pretty. I'd be puffing up.
Yeah.
He's puffing up. I mean, he is probably trying to talk to a couple ladies today.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's that shape. And now I'm going to look at my tail. And as I'm looking underneath the tail, this one does show me a very strong triangle right here. And from there, I'm going to walk the rest of the tail back. And it's kind of a sweetheart tail where I see two very strong tail feathers. And that heart shape comes in right there. There's my heart. Now I also might fix that. Okay. Here's the start of our shape. Now we also do have 2 feet again. If you're looking where we attach that triangle to the bottom, that is where that first leg is going to drop down. It's not quite straight down. It's a little bit off to the side. As I walk around his belly, I could say that actually from the back of his neck down, that's where his next foot is. Again, constantly looking back and forth for these little reference points around your drawing. Where does this line connect to this line? What is this angle in relation to this angle? Aha. And just to get it real quick, I might even put in just the swoop of this little branch. No birds in space that we know of. All right, coming back up again to the top, I'm going to go ahead and add, actually, I'm going to hold off on the eye beak line because I really want to focus on how to address this 3/4 stance. So I'm going to start back here at the top of his head. I'm going to calm down. So we just did our B basic shapes, C, let's contour. Let's clean it up. I'm going to give him a little bit flatter of a head. Make sure that he stays thick in the back of his neck. He doesn't have a hard arch to the back of his neck, but there's definitely something there. So I want to make sure that I divot in this line. Next, I'm going to sweep back his wing. Is it a hard curve? Is it a soft curve? It's a pretty soft curve. I'm pretty happy with the curve I already gave him. Okay, walking that down, we get to the nice fuzzy undertail coverts. And here, I'm going to make sure I leave a little room. This is a peak of turquoise.
Yeah, because you're almost seeing the upper tail coverts with that flash of turquoise.
Yeah, totally.
It's like the upper tail go on the top of the tail, and then the under below the tail, and the tail kind of shoots out in between. So if you kind of understand how they come together, it does make it easier to make it more realistic looking.
So you'll see like I'm adding in all these little fuzzy lines because I can imagine that his plumage right here is actually covering up more turquoise that would live there underneath the wing. And that is the peak that we're seeing down below. Now, as we get down below, I also know that's going to be black, so I can just go ahead and darken that in. As we get down below, I'm checking out, do I like the shape of his tail? Yeah, I do. I might make that a touch thinner. Okay. And yeah, there is also some gray in there. Okay, and definitely a very hard definition line between those 2 feathers, the gatherings really of feathers as they come together. And then I'm going to thin that one out too. All right, as I swoop back up again, I'm looking at the angle of this line. I might flatten that a little bit shallower. Okay, and then I see where his belly really drops down below. Comes back up again, presents this big puffy chest. And you'll also see here on this big puffy chest line, it is divided into two. And this point is going to make a difference for a couple of things for us as we carry on. So I want to make sure that I get this little keyhole in. And then as I sweep down, try and make a note, like how far back does that light rufous fade go to? And I'd say it goes back to beyond the leg. So maybe I'd add a couple dots because I know that I'm going to come back to that position. And this is the range of the fade. I realize you guys can't read that. Alrighty, so we've got that range of the fade. So I know that I'm going to build a heavier tone right here. All right, coming up some more. We've got the presentation right here, the chest, coming up into the neck. And again, here's that gorgeous little turquoise cape, which is going to come all the way to the back, but not quite touch the back of the neck and come back down. There we go. Now we're going to come back up. And you could see how this head is angled out. And we get to where the beak is. And if I'm looking at this, pizza pie, that beak to me is about halfway, but it's angled a little bit down because of his expression. Again, give him that chunky beak because of his bird family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on the last bird, on the mountain bluebird, the bill, you could, I was noticing that I was doing, it was mostly the top half of the bill that we were seeing, and you barely do a sliver of the bottom. And this is the opposite. The bottom half of the bill is larger than the top half. And if you've seen a cardinal before, this is pretty similar looking bill.
All right, and as far as the eye beak line, he's got this cheeky angle to it. Okay, so that eye is going to be a little bit higher.
It's very round.
It's very, very round. It's perfect. And I'm leaving like just a little dot. You can go back and add your cheater pen, but he's got this really cool darkening of feathers.
Yeah.
Okay, gives him this little smoky mask.
Yeah, it almost gives him a mask.
Yeah.
They'll call it a mask if it comes like through the eye, but it's almost like it's got a little partial mask.
Yeah. So here I might take away some of my extra lines so they're not confusing me for later. But that really gives me a good idea of what my little buddy looks like. All right.
So if he flies off.
If he flies off, now I know how to find him.
Yeah.
All right. And from here, the last thing I'll do is, again, I'm going to go in and I'm going to shade where that rufous fade is going to be. So every time I'm making a pass, I am making my lines lighter and lighter. Again, starting with a heavier shade and then getting lighter and lighter. And then I can kind of take away my guideline.
So another field mark on this is the wing bars on the white on the wings. So that may be, if you don't have time to throw it in, that's something you just put in your notes. 2 white wing bars, and then you can go back in and add that in later.
And that is this section right here. And you can look at that in terms of shapes. See where they're swooping to? So this one is white, black, white again. Oh, thank you so much, Catherine.
All right.
And then we go into stripe, 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 stripe. So now we can come back and add just a little bit here, here, and here. And with that, we've got a good capture of what our little friend looked like. So again, we can go back in our notes. We can find a similar picture. We can always finish this later, or we can save it as inspiration for the next time this little buddy might cross our path.
Okay.
All right. So we are coming up to the end of class now. And if anybody does have any final questions, if you would like to share your bird with us, we're happy to, I think, turn the microphone on for you if you have a question. You can write it in the chat, and we are now watching the chat. And again, we just really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you, for you to take the time out of your day for yourself, and also just to share it with us. It was super special to be here with y'all, as it always is.
Yeah,
All right.
thank you so much for joining us, Tina.
Thank you, Tina.
All right, here's mine again. Pretty pale, but I think I got the gist of the bird.
Yeah. Thank you, Rose. Happy birding to you as well.
Thank you.
I hope
happy
the storm
birding
goes away so I can bird again.
Yeah.
Katrina, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, yes. Have a very excellent year of nature journaling.
Yep, this year. Oh, Christine, thank you for sharing.
Nice.
Great job. Yeah, you definitely nailed the posture on that again. Yeah.
Absolutely. You tackled that. Kathy, thank you. Tracy, thank you.
Thank you guys, Tracy. Thanks for
Thank you guys for braving the 3/4 pose with us. Have a wonderful evening, and I hope we'll get to see everybody again. Thank you again to Nevada Humanities Council, and
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. We
Yeah.
really enjoy it and had such a great time. I'm glad Nez made it after the tree almost
did.
fell in her house.
I just got to drive back through the snowstorm to get home.
She's got a new pretty sweet car, so
Thank you, Christine, so much.
thank you guys.
Thank you, Lindsay and Meredith. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And please stay tuned for future workshops coming up in our series. And I'd love to work with Lindsay and Mez again. So,
Oh, we would just love
We're
to
in.
join you guys again. Thank you so much.
all right, take care, everyone. Have a good night.
Yeah, have a lovely evening and happy holidays and happy New Year.
Happy nature journaling. See you in the
Yep.
new year.
Woo!